Betrayed by the Council. Earth's fleet arrives and leaves nothing standing. Part 1. Commander Dale Owens had been to a lot of council sessions. He had sat through long speeches and slow votes and arguments that went nowhere for hours. He had learned to keep his face still and his hands quiet and his opinions to himself. That was the job. That was what a human liaison officer did in a room full of 17 alien species who all thought they were the most important ones there. But today was different. Today Dale stood in the back of the observation gallery and watched something that made his blood go cold. The chamber was packed. Every seat was filled. The air smelled like the different breathing mixes that the various species needed, a faint chemical sweetness that Dale had stopped noticing years ago, but noticed again today, because everything felt sharp and wrong. The lights were the usual pale gold. The 17 flags hung from the ceiling in their usual place. Everything looked normal. Everything looked exactly the way a lie is supposed to look. Councillor Drevin of the Surath stood at the center podium. Dale had met Drevin twice before. He was tall, gray-skinned, and very smooth. The kind of smooth that comes from years of practice, saying one thing while meaning another. He wore long white ceremonial robes, and he spoke in Galactic Common in a voice that was slow and careful, and almost kind. "The evidence before this council is clear," Drevin said. "The human colony on Mural 4 has constructed military installations within the protected buffer zone as defined by Zone Accord 7. This is a direct violation of treaty. The Council has reviewed all submitted data. The vote today is simple. The colony must be surrendered to Council authority. Any resistance from the human settlers will be treated as an act of aggression against the collective body." Dale did not move. He did not speak. He stood very still and listened to every word. Lieutenant Kara Simmons was beside him. She was younger than Dale by about 12 years, and she still had the habit of letting her feelings show on her face. Right now her jaw was tight and her eyes were hard. "That is a lie," she said under her breath. "Yes," Dale said. "The installations they are describing are a grain storage building and a water plant." "I know," Dale said. "I was there 3 months ago." He had been there in the early spring, when the fields around the colony were just starting to turn green. Mural 4 was a cold planet, rocky and windy, but the settlers had been working it for 20 years, and they had made it into something. The grain storage facility was a big gray building at the edge of the main settlement. The water processing plant was next to the river. Neither of them had weapons. Neither of them had soldiers. What they had were farmers and engineers, and a school full of children who were learning the names of stars. 14,000 people lived on Mural 4. Drevin kept talking. He talked about Zone Accord 7. He talked about the stability of the buffer region. He talked about the danger of unchecked human expansion. He made it all sound very reasonable and very legal and very sad, as if the council had no choice, as if this was simply the way things had to be. Dale watched the other council members as Drevin spoke. He read their faces the way he had learned to, over years of this work. Most of them were unreadable. A few of the smaller delegations looked uncomfortable. 3 looked like they had already decided how they would vote, and were just waiting for the moment. When the vote was called, Dale counted carefully. 14 signal stones raised in favor, 3 against. 14 to 3. The room made a low sound that was not quite applause and not quite silence. Drevin stepped back from the podium with the expression of a man who had just finished a difficult but necessary task. Dale turned and walked out of the chamber. He did not run. He walked at a steady pace through the outer corridor, past the security checkpoints, past the diplomatic reception rooms, and into a small private communications alcove near the east wing of the station. He had used this alcove before. It had a terminal with a hardline connection that bypassed the standard routing network. He sat down and pulled up the emergency channel. The emergency channel went directly to Fleet Command on Earth. It did not go through Council relay systems. It did not pass through any station filters. It was encrypted at a level that the station systems could not read. Dale had been given the access codes for it 3 years ago and had never used them until now. He typed quickly. He wrote, Miral 4. Council vote just passed 14-3. Resolution to seize colony. Evidence of military installations is false. I was on the ground 3 months ago. There is nothing there. 14,000 civilians, families, children. The Seraph want the planet for its position near the mineral corridor, requesting immediate guidance and support. He sent it and sat back and waited. The reply came in 38 minutes. It said, message received and confirmed. Do not escalate. Do not engage. Hold your position at the station. Fleet response is being prepared. Dale read those words 3 times. Fleet response is being prepared. He had not known exactly what Earth would do. He had hoped they would do something, but those 4 words told him more than he had expected to hear. He sat in the small alcove for a moment and let it settle. Then he stood up and walked back toward the diplomatic wing. Kara found him in the corridor outside the main conference room. She had her data tablet in her hand, and her expression told him she had already been busy. The Seraph enforcement fleet left their home station 6 hours ago, she said, before the vote. They were already moving before the vote even happened. Dale stopped walking. How many ships? 7. All warships. They will reach Miral 4 in about 30 hours. So it had never been a real vote. The vote was just the paperwork. The decision had already been made before anyone raised the signal stone. The enforcement fleet had already been sent. Drevin had stood at that podium and spoken about evidence and accords and collective authority, and the whole time his fleet was already on its way to park above a colony of 14,000 farmers. Dale felt something that was not quite anger and not quite fear. It was the feeling of understanding something clearly that you had hoped would turn out to be wrong. Pull everything you can on Miral 4's colony records, he said to Kara. Registration documents, charter filings, architectural surveys of those facilities. Everything. We are going to need it. For what? Kara asked. For the argument we are about to start making very loudly to everyone on this station who will listen. He started walking again. Behind him, through the long viewport that ran the length of the corridor, the stars were calm and distant, and completely indifferent to what had just happened in that chamber. Somewhere out there, 7 Surath warships were cutting through empty space toward a cold, rocky planet where children were going to school, and farmers were checking their fields. And 14,000 people had no idea that someone had just voted to take everything they had built. Dale pulled out his comm and started writing another message. This one was to the 3 council members who had voted against the resolution. He needed allies. He needed them fast. And somewhere behind him, moving through the dark between stars, he believed with everything in him that Earth was already moving. Betrayed by the Council. Earth's fleet arrives and leaves nothing standing. Part 2. The first thing Dale did the next morning was file a formal objection. He submitted it through the official Council Records Office at the start of business hours. It was a 40-page document. He and Kara had worked on it through most of the night. It contained the full registration history of the Miral 4 colony, the original charter filing, the independent architectural surveys of every structure the Sorath had labeled as military installations, and a legal argument citing 11 separate articles of the Galactic Accord that the Council resolution had violated. The Records Office acknowledged receipt at 8 in the morning. By 9, the objection had been denied. Not reviewed, not tabled for future consideration. Denied. One word, no explanation attached. Kara stared at the response on her screen. They did not even read it. They read the first page, Dale said. They saw who filed it, and they made their decision. He had expected this. He had filed the objection anyway because it needed to be in the record. Someday someone would look back at this sequence of events, and the record would show that Earth had tried every legal channel before anything else happened. That mattered. Not today, but later it would matter. He moved to the next thing. He submitted a request for an emergency session of the full council to present counter-evidence regarding the Mural 4 resolution. The request required signatures from at least 3 council members to be considered. He already had 2. He needed 1 more. While Kara worked on tracking down the 3rd signature, Dale went to find Sova. Sova was the senior representative of the Korish, one of the oldest species in the council. She was small, maybe 1.5 meters tall, with pale eyes and skin the color of old paper. She moved slowly and deliberately, like someone who had stopped rushing through things a long time ago. She had voted against the Sorath resolution. So had the 2 Tevin diplomats. Those were the only 3 no votes out of 17. Dale found her in the East Garden, a small pressurized room near the station's outer ring where the Korish delegation kept a few plants from their homeworld. She was standing by a low bench, watering something with small blue flowers that had no smell Dale could detect. She saw him coming and did not seem surprised. "You want my signature on the emergency session request," she said. "Yes," Dale said. She continued watering the plant. "I already signed it. I sent the confirmation to your lieutenant an hour ago." Dale stopped. "Thank you." "Do not thank me yet," Sova said. She set down the watering container and turned to look at him fully. Her pale eyes were calm and very direct. "The request will be tabled. Not denied, not this time, because denying it outright would look too obvious. It will be tabled indefinitely, which means the same thing, but with better paperwork." "You think they will not allow a hearing?" "I think Drevin has 17 years of favors built up in that chamber," she said. "The vote yesterday was not 14 species deciding independently that the Surath were right. It was 14 species who owed something or feared something, voting the way they were expected to vote. A hearing gives people a chance to change their minds. Drevin does not want that chance given." Dale stood in the small garden and thought about that. The blue flowers moved slightly in the recycled air. "What do you think Earth is going to do?" Sova asked. It was a direct question. The Korish were like that. They did not dance around things. "I sent the emergency message to Fleet Command," Dale said. "They replied and told me fleet response was being prepared." Sova was quiet for a moment. "How large is your fleet?" "I do not have exact numbers," Dale said, which was true. He knew roughly. He did not know exactly. "Large enough. Drevin knows Earth has ships," Sova said. "He calculated that Earth would not use them, that the diplomatic cost would be too high, that humans would argue and file documents and make speeches, but ultimately accept the decision of the collective body." "He calculated wrong," Dale said. Sova looked at him for another moment. Then she gave a very small nod, picked up her watering container, and went back to her plants. Dale left the garden and checked his messages. Fleet Command had sent an update. It said, "ETA to Mural system is now confirmed at 16 hours from time of this message. Hold position. Do not engage. Do not make public statements about fleet movement. Continue diplomatic activity." 16 hours. The Surath enforcement fleet had already been in orbit above Mural 4 for 3 hours by then. Dale had been monitoring the colony's transmissions. Governor Lena Marsh had been broadcasting on the open emergency channel every 2 hours. Calm and clear and steady. Each broadcast was the same basic message with small variations. She identified the colony, stated their lethal status, stated that they had no military presence and no hostile intentions, and asked the council to honor the founding charter. The Surath ships had not responded to her. They had simply held their orbit and broadcast their own demands for surrender directly to the colony's communication systems. The surrender deadline was in 41 hours. Dale did the math. The Earth fleet would arrive in 16. That meant 25 hours before the deadline. That was enough. That should be enough. He sat in his office and watched the incoming data. Kara brought him food at some point, and he ate it without tasting it. Outside the viewport, the station moved through its slow orbit, and the stars were unchanging. At hour 14, he received the most important transmission of the day. It was from Governor Lena Marsh, sent on a private diplomatic channel routed through the station's relay. Her face on the screen was tired, but steady. She had short, dark hair, and the kind of eyes that had been through hard things and kept going. "Commander Owens," she said, "I don't know if this message will reach you in time for it to matter. I want you to know that we are not going to surrender the colony. Not because we are brave, though I think we are, but because there is nothing to surrender for. We did not build military installations. We built a home. We built it legally, and we built it carefully, and 20 years of our lives are in this ground. My daughter was born here. She is 11 years old, and she goes to school 200 meters from the water plant that the Suroth are calling a military threat." She paused. "We are asking Earth to remember us, whatever happens." Dale watched the recording twice. Then he sent a reply on the same channel. He said, "Governor Marsh, we remember you. Help is coming. Hold on." He sent it and sat back and looked at the ceiling of his small office. 16 hours, then 15, then 14. Kara came in at hour 13 and sat down across from him without being asked. They did not talk much. There was not much to say that had not already been said or done. The documents were filed. The signatures were gathered. The emergency session request was sitting in the council queue, being quietly ignored. The messages had been sent. The channel was open. All they could do now was wait. Dale got up and went to the long viewport in the corridor and stood there looking at the stars. Somewhere out there, moving fast through the dark between systems, Earth's fleet was coming. He did not know exactly what it would look like when it arrived. He did not know what Admiral Holloway would say, or how the Surath commander would respond, or what the council would do when it was all in front of them and impossible to ignore. But he knew one thing with complete certainty. 14,000 people on a cold, rocky planet were still going to be there when it was over. He had decided that. And Earth, it seemed, had decided it too. Betrayed by the Council, Earth's fleet arrives and leaves nothing standing. Part 3. The alert came at 0340 station time when most of the diplomatic staff were asleep. Dale was not asleep. He had been sitting in the communications room for the past 2 hours, watching the Miral system feed on the tactical display, a slow updating map that showed the positions of the 7 Surath warships in orbit above the colony. They had not moved. They had not fired. They were just there, heavy and patient, waiting for the deadline to run out. Kara was asleep in the chair beside him. He had told her to go to her quarters, but she had refused and then fallen asleep in the chair anyway, which he decided was close enough. The alert was a single tone, soft but persistent. Dale leaned forward and looked at the display. Something was entering the Miral system. Not one something, many somethings. They came out of faster-than-light travel in sequence, dropping back into normal space the way large fleet formations did, one after another, in practiced order. The tactical display took several seconds to process what it was seeing, and then the icons appeared, one by one, building up into a picture that Dale sat very still and looked at for a long time. He reached over and shook Kara's shoulder. She came awake fast, the way soldiers and field officers learn to. "What is it?" "Look," he said. She looked at the display. Her mouth opened slightly. She closed it again. "How many?" "Still counting," Dale said. The first wave was destroyers. Fast, lean ships built for speed and precision. They spread out in a wide arc as they arrived, moving to form a perimeter around the entire Miral system. Not just around the planet, around the whole system. Every approach vector, every exit route, every angle covered. It was done quickly, and it was done without any wasted movement, like watching something that had been practiced a very large number of times. The second wave was cruisers, heavy ones. They came in formation, moving in pairs, taking up positions between the destroyer perimeter and the planet itself. They were older ships than the destroyers, bigger and slower, but they carried weapons that could crack the hull of almost anything flying. There were 12 of them. Dale counted twice to make sure. Then the third wave arrived. Kara made a sound that was not quite a word. 3 carrier-class vessels came out of faster-than-light travel, together, side by side, holding formation so tight that on the tactical display, their icons almost overlapped. Each one was enormous. Each one was longer than Veyron Station itself. They moved into the center of the formation with a kind of slow and absolute confidence, the way a mountain is confident, the way a fact is confident. The fighter wings launched immediately. Dozens of small, fast ships pouring out of each carrier, in organized streams, spreading into layered defensive patterns around the fleet. The whole arrival had taken 11 minutes. Dale looked at the completed display. The Surath Enforcement Fleet, 7 warships, was still sitting in orbit above Miral 4. They had not moved. They looked very small now. His comm chimed. It was a text message from Fleet Command. It said, "Admiral Holloway is in command. She will handle communications from this point. Stand by." Dale stood by. He did not have to wait long. Admiral Grace Holloway's voice came over the open band at 0412 station time. The open band was the channel that every ship, every station, every diplomatic post in the sector monitored at all times. It was used for distress calls and formal declarations and things that were meant to be heard by everyone. Her voice was even and calm, not aggressive, not loud, just clear, the way a statement of fact is clear when the person making it knows they are right and does not need to perform anything to prove it. This is Admiral Grace Holloway, commanding the Earth Defense Fleet, currently in the Miral system. We have reviewed the Council resolution regarding the colony on Miral 4. We find this resolution to be in violation of Articles 2, 7, and 12 of the Galactic Accord Founding Charter, which guarantee the right of peaceful habitation to all legally registered colony worlds, regardless of ongoing territorial or political disputes. Miral 4 is a legally registered colony. Its residents are civilians. They have committed no violation. We are formally placing this colony under Earth's protection. Any hostile action taken against the civilian population of Miral 4 or against any structure within the colony will be treated as an act of war against Earth. This is not a negotiating position. This is not a conditional statement. This is the situation as it stands. Holloway out. The message was sent simultaneously to the Surath Fleet, to Veyron Station, to the Council Chamber, and to every news relay in the sector. Dale sat in the communications room and listened to the silence after it ended. Then the station's internal alert system went off. And then every diplomatic comm channel lit up at once. And then Kara's tablet started chiming with incoming messages, and she reached for it and started scrolling, and her eyebrows went up and stayed up. "The Council Chamber is calling an emergency session," she said. "Of course it is," Dale said. "Dreven's office has sent 6 messages in the last 4 minutes." "What do they say?" Kara scrolled. Mostly variations of the word outrage. Dale stood up and stretched. His back hurt from sitting in the same position for hours. He went to the small window in the communications room and looked out at the stars. The Miral system was too far away to see directly from here. But he knew what was out there now. He had watched it arrive. He had counted it. "How many total shits?" Kara asked. "Final count is 53, Dale said. "Plus the fighter wings off the carriers, which brings the effective force considerably higher." Kara was quiet for a moment. "The Surath brought 7. "Yes," Dale said. 7 against 53, plus the fighters." Kara set her tablet down on the desk very carefully. Dreven genuinely did not think Earth would do this. "No," Dale said. "He thought we would file documents and make speeches. He thought we cared too much about what the other council members would think. He thought the political cost of sending the fleet was too high." Was he wrong about that? About the cost? Dale thought about it honestly. There will be a cost. Some of those 14 council members are going to be angry for a long time. Some of them are going to say that Earth acted outside the collective body. Some of them are going to call it aggression. He paused. But 14,000 people on Mural 4 are going to wake up tomorrow and still be on their planet. And the children in that school are going to keep going to school. And Dreven's fleet is going to turn around and go home. He picked up his own comm. I think Earth decided that was worth whatever the cost was going to be. His comm showed a new message from Fleet Command. It said, "Fleet is in position. All systems nominal. Admiral Holloway has requested that you be available for Council communication support. Please confirm." Dale typed back, "Confirmed. Ready." He put the comm in his pocket and looked at Kara. "Get some coffee," he said. "We are going to be busy." Outside, somewhere far across the dark, 53 Earthships sat in a cold system around a small rocky planet. Quiet and enormous and completely unmovable. The Surath fleet had gone very still. The stars did not care about any of it, but the people on Mural 4 were still there. Headline: Betrayed by the Council. Earth's fleet arrives and leaves nothing standing. H1, Part 4. The emergency council session started at 0900, and it was the loudest room Dale had sat in for a very long time. He was in the observer gallery again, same position as 2 days ago, but the chamber below him looked completely different now. 2 days ago it had been orderly, controlled. Dreven had stood at the podium and spoken in his slow, careful voice, and the vote had gone exactly the way he had arranged it to go. Everything had been smooth. Today, nothing was smooth. 7 delegations were trying to speak at once. The session moderator, a thin Tevan official named Preth, was hitting his signal chime repeatedly and being ignored. Half the room was standing. 3 delegations had brought additional staff members who were crowding the side aisles and passing their representatives documents and tablets every few minutes. Councillor Dreven stood at the podium. He looked like the same man he had been 2 days ago. Same white robes, same careful posture, but something in his face was different. The smoothness was still there, but it was working harder now, like a machine that was starting to strain. Earth has committed an act of military aggression, he said, when the room finally came down to a level where he could be heard. They have deployed a war fleet in direct response to a lawful resolution of this council. This is a violation of the collective authority of this body. This is exactly the kind of unilateral action that the founding charter was designed to prevent. We must respond with a unified, "Which article?" said a voice from the left side of the chamber. Dreven stopped. Sova was on her feet. She was small enough that standing did not make her dramatically taller, but the room went quiet when she spoke. She had that quality. Years of being present and saying true things had given her a kind of weight. "You keep saying lawful resolution," she said. "I would like to know which article of the founding charter authorizes the seizure of a registered colony world on the basis of military installations that do not exist. I have been looking for that article. I cannot find it." Dreven's jaw tightened slightly. "The evidence submitted by the Surath delegation clearly shows." "I have the independent survey," Sova said. She held up a data tablet, conducted 14 months ago by the Interstellar Colonial Registry, which is not affiliated with any species represented on this council. The structures identified by the Surath delegation as military installations are a grain storage facility measuring 40 by 60 meters, and a water processing plant located adjacent to the main river. I have the architectural schematics. I will submit them to the official record right now if you would like. The room got loud again. Dale watched from the gallery. He watched which species leaned toward each other and whispered. He watched which delegations were pulling up data on their tablets. He watched the Valori trade bloc, who had voted with the Surath 2 days ago, and saw their senior representative sitting very still, with an expression that was hard to read, but was definitely not the confident expression of someone who felt good about recent decisions. Kara was beside him, keeping notes on her tablet. "The Novan delegation just sent a private message to Earth's ambassador," she said quietly, requesting a meeting. "The Novan voted with Dreven 2 days ago," Dale said. Yes, Kara said. They did. Another delegation sent a meeting request 20 minutes later, then another. Dale watched the numbers shift in real time, not in the vote which had already happened, but in the room, in the way people were sitting, and who they were talking to, and what they were doing with their hands. Drevin tried 3 more times to take control of the session. He cited the charter, he cited precedent, he cited the stability of the collective body. He used the word aggression 11 times, Dale counted. But every time Drevin made an argument, someone answered it. Other voices too, ones that had been quiet 2 days ago. A Tevan diplomat named Oren, who had a very precise legal mind, and who kept directing the chamber's attention back to the actual text of the founding charter, article by article. A young HFY representative, who had been watching everything with sharp eyes, and now started asking questions about the chain of custody for the evidence the Surath had submitted. How had it been collected? Who had certified it? What was the process? Drevin did not have clean answers to those questions. That was the moment Dale felt the session change. Not the whole thing, not a complete reversal, but a shift, like the first degree of movement in something very heavy that has been sitting still for a long time. At 11:40, the moderator Preth called a recess. During the recess, Dale went down from the gallery and walked through the outer corridors. He needed to move. He had been sitting too long, and his mind needed the motion. He found Oren, the Tevan diplomat, near the water station at the end of the main hall. Oren was a tall species, built lean, with 4 fingers on each hand, and eyes that were placed slightly wider than human eyes. He and Dale had spoken a few times over the years. Not close, but respectful. "Interesting morning," Oren said. "Yes," Dale said. "The evidence question is not going away," Oren said. "The HFY representative is not going to stop pulling on that thread. She is young, but she is very thorough." "What do you think happens next?" Dale asked. Oren thought about it. "I think the resolution does not survive a formal evidence review. I think Drevin knows that. I think the question now is not whether Mural 4 keeps its status, but how many other things come undone in the process of proving it." Dale considered that. "Other things like what?" "The Surath have been building toward this for years," Oren said. "Mural 4 is not the first place they have tried to use Zone Accord language to justify boundary expansion. It is just the first time they got a vote through. If the evidence is formally discredited, people will start looking at the other cases, the ones where smaller species did not have Earth's fleet to call on." He picked up his water cup and looked at it thoughtfully. "You may have done more today than protect one colony," he said. "You may have pulled a thread that unravels several years of very carefully built arrangements." Dale did not say anything to that. He was not sure yet if that was a good thing or a complicated thing, or both at the same time. His comm vibrated. He looked at it. It was a message from Admiral Holloway, routed through Fleet Command. It said, "Surath Enforcement Fleet has begun moving away from Mural 4 orbit. They have not communicated their intentions, but their heading is back towards Surath space. We are tracking them. Colony is reporting normal status. No hostile action taken. How is the council session going?" Dale typed back, slowly, but in the right direction. Holloway's reply came in seconds. It said, "Take your time, we are not going anywhere." Dale put his comm away and went back into the chamber for the afternoon session. Drevin was still at the podium when the session resumed. He was still smooth. He was still controlled. But Dale watched him through the whole long afternoon, and he saw the thing happening that he had been waiting for. Drevin was running out of room. Every argument he made was being met. Every claim was being checked. The evidence question had not been resolved yet, but it was on the table now, and it was not coming off the table. 3 more delegations had privately contacted Earth's ambassador during the recess. The Valori representative had stopped making eye contact with Drevin's delegation across the chamber. At 17:30, the session was adjourned for the day. No new vote had been taken, but the room was different from what it had been that morning. And that morning had been different from 2 days ago. And 2 days ago, the colony had seemed lost. Now, It did not seem lost. Dale walked out of the chamber into the corridor, and stood at the long viewport and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there in the Mirror system, 53 Earthships were sitting in perfect stillness, quiet and patient and completely immovable. They had not fired a single weapon. They did not need to. Betrayed by the Council, Earth's fleet arrives and leaves nothing standing. Part 5. The formal evidence review took 9 days. Dale had expected it to take longer. The Council's review processes were usually slow and tangled, built for compromise rather than speed. But the Havari representative, whose name was Venna, turned out to be exactly as thorough as Oren had said she was. She moved through the Surath submission like someone who had been waiting a long time for the chance, and was not going to waste it. On day 3, the survey data was formally flagged as inconsistent with independent colonial records. On day 5, 2 members of the team that had produced the Surath survey could not account for significant gaps in their data collection timeline. On day 7, the architectural firm whose schematics had supposedly been altered to conceal the military nature of the structures submitted a formal complaint to the Council. They had not altered anything. Their original schematics matched the independent registry survey exactly. A grain storage building, a water processing plant. Nothing else. On day 8, the Valori trade bloc withdrew its public support for the Surath resolution. They did not do it dramatically. They sent a quiet statement through the standard administrative channel. 3 paragraphs, careful language, saying they had reviewed new information and believed a full reassessment was appropriate. It was the kind of statement designed to be forgotten later, to be pointed at and used as evidence that the Valori had always been reasonable. Dale read it and understood exactly what it was, and filed it away anyway, because even a self-serving retreat was still a retreat. Drevin made one more attempt to stop the review process on day 8. He submitted a procedural motion, arguing that the review was itself a violation of Council authority, since the vote had already been taken. The motion was voted down 9-8. Dale had not expected that margin. 2 days earlier he would have guessed it would fail 6-11 at best. 9-8 meant people were moving faster than he had thought. He sent a message to Fleet Command that evening. 9-8. Review continues. Colony status holding. Fleet Command forwarded it to Admiral Holloway. Holloway's reply came back an hour later. Good. Crew is getting restless, but they are managing. Someone started a card tournament on the carrier. Morale is fine. Dale smiled at that in the privacy of his office. He had met Holloway once in person, 2 years ago, at a Fleet Command briefing. She was a compact woman in her 50s, with gray-streaked hair, and the particular kind of steadiness that came from years of making decisions in situations where being wrong meant people died. He had liked her immediately. On day 9, Venna presented the final findings of the evidence review to the full Council. The chamber was full again. Every seat, every side aisle, every observer gallery. The session moderator Preth looked like he had not slept well in 9 days, which was probably accurate. Venna stood at the center podium. She was young for a senior council representative, younger than Dale by several years, and she stood very straight and spoke in a clear voice without any smoothness in it, just directness. She said that the survey data submitted by the Surath delegation had been materially altered. She said the alterations had been made after the original data was collected and before it was submitted to the Council. She said the structures identified as military installations were civilian agricultural and utility infrastructure with no weapons capability. She said that the legal basis for the resolution had therefore never existed. She submitted everything to the record. Then she sat down. The room was quiet for a moment. Drevin did not stand up. He sat at the Surath delegation table and looked at the surface in front of him. His hands were folded. His face was still. He did not look angry. He looked like a man who had made a calculation and found out the calculation was wrong, and was now quietly working through what came next. Dale watched him and felt no satisfaction. This was not the kind of moment that felt good. 14,000 people had spent 9 days not knowing if they were safe. Governor Lena Marsh had been broadcasting her calm, measured emergency transmissions every 2 hours for more than a week. The children in the school on Miral 4 had almost certainly known something was wrong, because children always know. None of that was fixed by Drevin looking at a table. The vote on formally striking the resolution took place at 1500, 13-4. The resolution against Miral 4 was removed from the record. The evidence submitted by the Suarath delegation was formally classified as fraudulent. The colony's status under the founding charter was reconfirmed with full protections. Dale did not cheer. He sat in the gallery and watched the signal stones go up, and counted them, and then let out a breath he felt like he had been holding for 9 days. Kara beside him quietly pressed her hand against his arm for a moment. He nodded. He sent the message to Holloway. 13-4. Resolution struck. Colony confirmed. Full charter protections restored. Her reply came fast. It said, "Understood. Beginning fleet withdrawal from Miral system. We will clear the perimeter over the next 6 hours. Well done over there." Dale typed back, "You did the hard part." Holloway replied, "We sat in chairs for 9 days. Your hard part was messier." He put his comm away and went to find Sova. She was in the East Garden again, standing by her small blue flowers. She looked tired. 9 days of sessions would tire anyone. 13-4, Dale said. "I know," she said. "I was one of the 13. She looked at the flowers for a moment. "What happens now?" "The Suarath face a formal inquiry into the evidence falsification," Dale said. "That will take a long time, and probably result in something that looks like accountability, without quite being it. Drevin will resign his council position before the inquiry concludes, and retire to something comfortable. The Valori will spend the next year being cooperative, and hoping people forget they voted for the resolution in the first place." "And Earth?" Dale thought about how to answer that. Some species are frightened. Some are angry. Some of both. There will be arguments about whether the fleet was justified, about whether Earth acted within its authority, about whether sending 53 warships over a colony dispute was proportionate. "What do you think?" "I think 14,000 people are still on their planet," Dale said. "I think a woman named Lena Marsh is going to wake up tomorrow morning and walk to her office without enemy warships over her head. I think her daughter is going to go to school. I think the farmers are going to check their fields." He paused. "I think proportionate is a word people use when they were not the ones in danger." Sova was quiet for a long time after that. Then she said something he did not expect. "You should know," she said, "that 3 council members who voted against the resolution on day 1 came to see me this morning. Species with colonies of their own. Smaller species, without large fleets. They wanted to know if Earth would do the same for them, if something like this happened to one of their worlds." Dale looked at her. "What did you tell them?" he said. "I told them I didn't know," Sova said, "but I told them they should ask." Dale nodded slowly. He thought about that on the walk back to his office, through the long corridor with the viewport, where the stars were always the same calm distance away. He thought about it while he packed his things and sent the formal end-of-incident report to Fleet Command. He thought about it while Kara booked their transport home. He did not have the answer to what those 3 delegations had asked Sova. That was not his decision. That was bigger than him. But he knew what had happened here. He knew it clearly. Earth had been told to stand by and trust a process that had already been corrupted. Earth had filed the documents and sent the petitions and worked every legal channel and watched them all get closed. And then Earth had done the thing that no one believed it would do. It had shown up. 53 ships. No weapons fired. No ultimatums beyond the one that mattered. Just an enormous, calm, immovable presence that said, "These are our people, and we are here, And that is the end of the discussion. Dale stood at the viewport one last time before he left the station. The fleet was gone from the Miral system now. 6 hours of quiet withdrawal, everything done in order, no drama, just ships moving home through the dark, the same way they had come. The colony was safe, the charter was restored, the record was corrected. He pressed one hand against the cold viewport glass and looked at the stars for a moment. Then he picked up his bag and walked toward the departure dock. Behind him, the chamber was already moving on to the next thing. But on Miral 4, the fields were green, and the children were in school, and the stars above the colony were just stars again. That was enough.